Hello and welcome, my name is Martin and it's been such a long time since my last video. I really wanted to make a video and I really do appreciate everybody's patience for, waiting until this video was uploaded, but thank you ever so much for joining. Today what I'm going to be doing is sharing my personal experiences that I encountered when I was returning back into a physical face-to-face environment teaching real students, and that transition from an online to a face-to-face environment. Now, as you're aware, the last 2 years or so have been incredibly difficult for all teachers around the world, with many teachers having to move from a physical environment to an online environment, and now they're returning back to a physical environment again, and this is exactly what I'm experiencing at the moment. Many of my students were online and I had to teach many of my courses online, but now moving to a face-to-face physical classroom, it's been quite a challenge but also quite an experience, and it's so nice to be back in a physical classroom. But today I'm going to be sharing with you some of the challenges, the struggles and the experiences that I encountered teaching face-to-face with real students. So let's get started. One of the first issues that I encountered when it was going into a physical classroom was actually the classroom management. And it may seem such a easy thing to do, but for me it was quite simple when you were teaching online, because all you could do is refer to the student and they had their name allocated by their picture or image or what have you, and it was very easy to remember students' names. But what I found quite challenging at the minute is I'm having to go into a classroom and the students don't have a name or below their face or anything, or on their chest. So what I'm having to do is draw on a piece of paper and write all the students' name and sort of do a sort of classroom map and identify the names of the students on this sort of rough sketch that I've drawn, and then refer to this whilst I'm actually teaching, because for me particularly, I find it so difficult to remember students' names, and that was the first struggle that I encountered just in the classroom management perspective. And it's so important to remember students' names, otherwise you feel disconnected and you don't feel as if you're developing that rapport with the students. But it's so it was quite eye-opening when it came down to remembering students' names. But that was the first struggle. But also another struggle with regards to classroom management was controlling students. And recently I was involved with teaching young learners again, teenagers, and I was helping out a friend at a local language school, and I did teach adults, and I was moved over to teenagers, and I hadn't taught teenagers either online or face-to-face for about 4 years, and I found it quite challenging and quite struggling at times to try and find material which would engage and motivate young learners in that regard. And having taught adults for predominantly most of the last 4 or 5 years, either online or face-to-face, having that disconnection between young learners and myself, it made it even more difficult. So that was the second thing with regards to classroom management, trying to engage the learners in that regard. And I suppose the final element of the classroom management was organising the classroom, and I would have to go into a classroom maybe 5 or 10 minutes before and try and arrange the materials as I wanted. So if I wanted to do like a reading relay or a dictation exercise or some sort of activity to get the students up and moving around the classroom, I'd have to go in there earlier and move the classroom about, move the furniture and chairs around. But then teaching online, you don't have any of that. So that was quite an interesting insight returning back to a physical classroom. The next experience or struggle that I encountered when returning to a face-to-face experience again for me was the lesson planning. And for me, when I was teaching online, I was able to understand and deal with certain activities within a live lesson. So it would be conversation and also all sorts of interaction going on, but then outside of the online lesson, it will be reading, it will be listening, it will be note-taking, writing, and so there'll be very little going on with regards to the those skills in an online environment, live lesson. But when you're going into a face-to-face environment, you're trying to encourage and include all skills, not just conversation, which is what happens, and that interaction that happens within a live lesson between student and teacher, or students and teacher. So for me, I found it quite a sort of having to retrain myself to deliver a reading activity or a listening activity and getting students to complete these, rather than getting them to complete it before the lesson and sharing their answers as I would normally do within an online environment. So for me, it was trying to remind myself about what did I do beforehand, before the pandemic? How would I encounter a reading activity? How would I make it engaging for students? And that for me was quite interesting, because it appeared so natural before the pandemic. You get your reading, you can either cut it up and get students to reorganise it or post it up around the classroom. But now I'm trying to remind myself, well, what did I do? It's been so long since I was in a classroom doing a listening or a reading activity. So what did I do? And trying to remind myself about what I did before the pandemic was quite interesting. Things didn't appear to come so natural, and it was trying to retrain yourself again and remind yourself about what you did and what you were, how to engage the students. So this leads me on to my next point about the engagement of students. And for me, within an online environment, there's that sort of disconnection between what the students are doing within a live lesson with teacher, students, and within a physical classroom. And the engagement within an online environment is quite artificial. It's quite difficult to assess engagement within an online environment, whereas within a physical environment you can see instantly whether students are engaged, whether they're bored, whether they're connecting with the material, and trying to lead into activities, trying to ensure topics are engaging for students. I go in with a sort of warm-up within a physical classroom, and again I had to remind myself, how would I warm up, or how would I lead this sort of topic that I used to do before the pandemic? So again, I had to remind myself about what I was doing and how I was doing it, and it took just a few weeks for me to find my feet again and that sort of thing. So that was challenging. The final point I want to make is with regards to teacher talking time. Now, within an online environment, the interaction is kind of limited between teacher and students, but within a physical classroom, the interaction is a lot more spontaneous and a lot more natural. I found myself within an online environment talking a lot more than I would within a physical environment. But then returning back to a physical classroom, I found myself talking a lot more, and I'd have to bite my tongue. I'd have to try and refrain myself from actually talking too much or lecturing to the students in that regard. And I kind of had to go back and go, I don't do this within a physical environment. And it was quite quite a reminder for me about how I did things within a physical environment, and that sort of difference between online and face-to-face is quite striking in some regards. Anyhow, that was my sort of experience of going back into the classroom. It did take a few weeks for me to start finding my feet and understanding about what was expected of me, and I would find it quite stressful about students didn't seem engaged this time, so hopefully next time I'll try and do this. And I really had to do a lot of self-reflection, which is really about why I haven't been making many videos, to be honest, because I found it quite stressful trying to develop lessons and organise my classes so that they were engaging, interactive, fun and educational, and had a sort of aim and an objective that needed to be achieved. So that's essentially why I haven't really been making many videos so far, but I have invested my time in what I'm doing in a physical environment. So yeah, I hope it has been useful, and I hope some of the sort of struggles or experiences that I encountered going back into a classroom seem to strike a chord with you. And if it does, then feel free to comment. And also, if you have experiences about going back into a physical classroom after years of teaching online, please share your experiences. It would be lovely to know that I'm not by myself, with these struggles and issues. It's such a nice way to go back into the classroom. I have missed teaching within a physical environment, and I've also missed the sort of camaraderie and the sort of support and the social side of things with other staff members and other teachers, and bouncing ideas off with other teachers. It's kind of I read an article about how there's like ghost employees, where employees have been working on the fringes, online, and they've kind of been lost into the ether and the internet. Whereas, it kind of felt very similar to me, where I kind of was working online and dealing with staff members, but it was very much virtual and it was very broken and it didn't really feel to fit. And it's so nice to be back in a staff room with other staff members and teachers and educators to work together and share ideas and bounce ideas off of each other. And that's probably the biggest thing that I've missed during this pandemic, I suppose. But we're moving forward and hopefully we're getting there, and I'm looking forward to the forthcoming months of going into classes and teaching real classes. Not that I don't miss online teaching, and I do enjoy online teaching, but yeah, that's where we are. Anyhow, I'm going to stop talking now, much like how I was talking to the students in the classroom, and I'm going to leave it there for today. So thank you ever so much. Again, a huge apologies for the delay in making a video. It's just been so stressful. Anyway, I'll see you soon. Take care, stay safe, and hit that thumbs up. I'll see you soon. Bye bye.